Alright guys, well, the day has finally come. I hadn't realized it had been as long as it had until I looked back on some pictures and realized this was way back in December 19th. But some of you may or may not know, but my intake gasket decided to spring a leak right after I got done doing all my exhaust and stuff. The passenger rear corner sprung a leak on the intake and it's pissing coolant on the ground. And I'm going to finally change it today. And yeah, it's fairly straightforward. You do have to remove the distributor, so I'm going to do it one way. It's actually in the OEM information. There's one of two ways. You can either mark it like what I'm going to do, or you can get the motor at top dead center and you know, start all over like you would with a new engine or whatever. But I'm going to do a little shortcut because it is in the OEM diagram. So, well, this is what you'll need. You'll need some coolant, you need some RTV, you'll actually need gasket sealer, which I actually had to just run out and get. That's something that I skimmed over on the procedures. The bottom of the intake bolts for the lower intake will actually need sealant. But here's the Felpro gasket kit, MS 98000T, and this pretty much has everything you need: upper intake, lower intake, both valve cover gaskets, the distributor O-ring, I'm guessing, throttle body mounting. Basically, if you were replacing both upper and lower intake, it comes with every gasket you'd pretty much need. And a little tube of RTV, but I went ahead and got extra. Now, I actually, right after it happened, ordered the OEM AC Delco, but I only just realized that's the V6 part number. How the heck did the parts guy get a V6 part number when the Yukon never came with a V6? I have no idea. I don't know if that was his screw up or where they went to go pick it up and they gave us the wrong one. No clue. But it's been over 2 months now, so I don't know if I can actually return that or not. I can try, but anyway, I don't know how much of this I'm actually going to record. But pretty much you're going to have to take the belt off. You're going to have to loosen the AC compressor, fold the AC compressor out of the way, take the intake tube off, take any of the coolant lines that go to the intake, so the upper radiator hose and any of the heater hoses you'll have to take off. You'll have to take off the fuel lines. You will have to unplug every wiring harness that goes to the upper part of the intake and throw that to the side. And you also have to take the throttle cables off and throw those to the side. Yeah, I don't know how much of this I'm going to record, but I'm going to start by taking the belt off, which is easy. Just it's either a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch drive. Stick it in the square hole. Pull it this way to decompress it and pull the belt off. And then there's 4 bolts on the AC compressor. One there, one up there, one up there. And throw the intake to the side. So, yeah. Alright, now, take the air intake temperature sensor. Mass airflow. Take the little part of your PCV system off. Take the little bolt out for your intake hose. Lift that up. Pull it back. You're probably going to have a big Vortec box on here. Take the little clips off the air box. From the air box. And I just like to take my whole intake out. Go ahead and take off the connectors on your AC compressor. There's another one back here in the back. Should be all the hoses. So 13 millimeter. Should all be the same sizes. Take this, lay it out of the way. Pull the hose out of the catch down here so you can get more room, put it where you want it. Move the throttle cable by just pushing forward. Actually, that's a cruise control cable. Just push forward, it comes off. Throttle cable. Open up the throttle. And pull out. Open up the throttle. Pull it out. It comes off. And then there's, looks like a 10 there and a 10 there. Take that, lay it over to the side. And I'm going to put the nuts and the bolts back. Guess I'll remove the upper radiator hose now. There's the upper radiator hose. I don't know if you can see this. Probably can. There's 2 little push tabs on this plastic heater hose line. Push those in. This is probably going to break, especially if you've never taken it off before. I've taken it off before. I didn't break it. You see these little 2 push tabs right here? Push that in. Alright, I'm going to take loose this heater hose right here. Might not see, might see, might not see. Down here, it's another bypass that goes up to the water pump area. There we go. That was a little tricky. Now I'm going to try to do this side too, because the pipe comes up back here behind the alternator, beside the thermostat and over. Okay, that one was a heck of a lot easier. Can I remove this hose? Yes, yes I can. There is another bypass hose down in here. Disconnect the thermostat, or the temperature sensor. That's all of that disconnected over there. I don't think I'll need to disconnect the alternator, but I will anyway. The battery's already disconnected. Alternator is disconnected. There's a couple of grounds right here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. Pretty much any wiring that's up on the top of the engine is going to have to be taken off anyway. There's 2 ground wires. That's that whole harness loose. Again, I got all that disconnected. I'm going to disconnect the throttle position sensor. the idle air control. That gets that all disconnected. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the main power for the injectors. There's a clip on both sides, and there's supposed to be this lock tab, but I've had this off a couple times, and I've never gotten my injector to sit all the way up. So this really is only clipped on one side. I've never been able to get my safety lock back in there. So the ground that goes, actually that's not a ground, I think that's the cam sensor, or crankshaft sensor. It is the crankshaft sensor. I don't think I need to disconnect the crankshaft sensor. I might have to. I'm going to disconnect the purge valve up here on this side. Disconnect whatever the hell that is. Looks like a secondary purge. I don't know. Actually, that might be the vent valve. That is the vent valve, I guess. It's open right there. Yeah, the canister's there, so that's the vent valve. Disconnect the ignition module. Disconnect the coil. Disconnect the temperature sensor on this side. But disconnect the PCV, then connect that's all disconnected. Disconnect the map sensor, which is right under this big harness. Map sensor is right here. Like I said, pretty much anything on the top of the engine needs to be disconnected. Take that wiring loom loose. That loose. Take the alternator loose. Alternator plug. Got that loose. As you know, take this vacuum line loose because it goes. Yeah, that's the vent valve. It goes across the whole engine. I'm actually going to take it off the canister, which is over here on the side. That goes from the canister over here in the corner to the vent valve over here. It's on the other side. The throttle body. There's another hose that goes over here. That goes, this controls, this little vacuum line goes to the firewall for the heater control valve for your HVAC. So this is your heater heater control valve. Alright, running the vehicle now. Behind the harmonic balancer, there's the crankshaft sensor. And then just over a little bit more, oops, there's a crankshaft sensor. And there's a ground right there. You got to take those off so you can get that line and pull it up to the top. Got the cam wire and that grounding cable, which is looking a little worse for the wear. Looks like it's been spun around a couple times. Not by me. Okay, that's the whole front. That's pretty much the rear. Take the coil wire off. We're gonna have to pull the distributor anyway. And yeah, that's all of the wiring loose. So pull the brake booster off. I can just kind of go up front, kind of. Now, I'll get you closer to show you how to do the fuel lines. Before I do the distributor, I'll show you how to actually get the vacuum booster off the pump, or off the intake. Just twist it, and there's a flat on it. And just move, wiggle it a little bit, comes right out. You can smell the fuel. Now to remove the distributor, there's two Torx bits, one here, one here. I think they might be, they're either T10 or T15s, one of the two, to get those out. But disconnect all of your spark plug wires. And don't worry about it, because the distributor is actually labeled. Because you got to pull this out to get to the fuel lines. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the distributor lines off and the cap off. And then I'm actually going to show you how to mark where you need to mark. Alright, pull the distributor cap off. Again, just screw there, and then right over there, there's another screw. There are T15s. And now, according to the repair manual, and this is from GM, you can go to top dead center and do it that way, or you can shortcut it, and where the pointer is right now, mark it. Take a paint pen, something, mark the base of the distributor. Then, as you pull it out, when it stops turning, mark it again. That way, when you push it down, you have the rotor pointing where it left off, and as you push it down into the motor, it should twist around and end at your paint mark. That way, you don't have to go top dead center and go through all that stuff. Also, they want you to mark both the intake and the distributor again, so you know where your timing mark is, or where the timing is, basically. Because the base of the distributor has the cam sensor, so that's going to affect your cam timing, well, your timing in general. So you want to mark the upper intake / lower intake and the distributor base, and then you also want to mark where the pointer is now and where the pointer is when you pull it out, so you don't get yourself confused. I'll show you that in a minute. Alright, this is what it's look like. That's the mark that goes towards the intake, and I got the back of the upper intake marked. I'll probably, when I take everything off, I'll put a scribe mark on it, because I plan on taking everything apart and washing it. There is the number 1 mark, which is where it was when it was in the vehicle, and that's the number 2 mark on where it was when I pulled it out of the vehicle. So when you put it back in, line that part up with the intake, drop it down, and it should spin back exactly in line where it needs to be. If it doesn't, then it's a one or two teeth off, and you got to do it again to the side. And I'll show you how to get the fuel lines off. Alright, to get the distributor off, there's a 13 millimeter right there. And I just used a crow's foot to get it. If you don't know what a crow's foot is, it's these. And then to get the fuel lines off, it's a 5/8, and I also used a crow's foot to go down there and break those loose, and then they mostly came off by hand. That one I had to crow's foot a couple times. Now there's a bolt down in there that holds the bracket on, and there's holds the pipes on, and there's also, these are either 8s or 7s Go ahead and take those loose and pull this whole line out. Before you break those loose, make sure you go to the distributor valve and press it with a flathead screwdriver with a rag to get the pressure out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that fuel line off. Once I get the fuel line off, that should be mostly it. And then I can actually start taking the bolts that hold the intake off. Alright, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. I removed the EGR valve. It's two 10mm bolts. I removed that other coolant line, which goes to that. There's one there and one there. There are two little coolant loops from the water pump. You have to remove both of those. I removed one of them earlier. I just went ahead and removed the other one. I removed the EGR tube up here. And I'm also going to take it loose down here and just completely remove it. I actually have headers, and I just never removed my EGR tube, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I took my ignition coil and ignition module from those two studs right there, and I took that bracket and bent it up right here, this bracket right here, and bent it up. Because there's a 14mm on the back of the head, but it's kind of difficult to get to, so I'm just going to bend that out of the way. But yeah, once I get this EGR tube off, I can actually start removing I'm going to go through and clean all the crap up with the air hose, and then I can actually take pretty sure it's just 8 bolts, 2 in each corner, and then I can remove the intake in one piece. And being mindful of the oil pressure sensor in the back. Alright, got it all blown off, got all the stuff out of the sides. I'm going to go ahead and take the valve covers off, which is just 4 10mm. I'm guessing, yeah, 10mm on both sides. I'm going to pull those off. I might have to pull the vent solenoid off. Might be able to get around it. If not, it's just one 10mm right there. I can get that out of the way. It looks like I might have to remove my alternator bracket, which I guess you can just come up under here and get it right there. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get the valve covers off and then start taking the 8 bolts off for the intake. Again, I may or may not take off the oil pressure switch sensor. It's right there. I don't want to break it, so that might actually be something I take off. We'll see when that comes. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the valve covers off. Well, I got the passenger side valve cover off. To get the driver's side valve cover off, you have to remove the AC bracket. And I'm just going to go ahead and loosen all these. There's 2 that look just like this in each corner. So there's 8 in total. So I'm going to go ahead and get those off, and I'll be back. Alrighty. Well, I got all the bolts loose, but this one, it actually won't go up high enough. So there's a bolt there, a nut there, another bolt there. Now underneath the truck, right below the power steering pump, there's a bolt there. There is a nut there, nut there, bolt there. And then the final one down here, there's a nut there. That should be slotted, so I don't think that one has to come all the way out. But take that out, and this bracket should move forward. That way you can get that valve cover off and finally pull that last bolt out to get the intake out. And there we go. I loosened that bolt up, or that nut up. It is now back far enough from the block I can get to that final bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that intake off, or pull that valve cover off, then pull that last bolt out, and the upper and lower intake should come out as one assembly. And then I'll come back and show you that. And then I'm going to actually separate the upper and the lower intake. And then I got to run back into town and get some degreaser, because I forgot to get that when I was in there earlier. Go into town, get some degreaser, and I'm going to clean up all of this carbon buildup that's in this intake. I'm doing an EGR delete at the same time I'm doing all this, because I got headers. So I'm going to go ahead and do that delete. So should have no more. And I got a new PCV valve, so that should help with all this carbon buildup. Alright, let's see how easy this is going to come up. I've already had coolant leak out of it, so it should be fairly loose. Let me go get a pry bar. It is going to be stuck down with RTV both in the front and in the back. I don't want to go on the valves either. Could just get a hammer. Okay, that side's kind of loose. That's loose. Yeah, you're gonna have to watch out for the oil unit, sending unit. Yummy. Wow. Was it good? What the hell was that? Well, that was a piece of paper that went down into the yeah, get a pair of needle nose and get that out. That looks to be left over from when this intake was done last. That is a piece of electrical tape that has been stuck inside the intake since the last time it was done. There's the old gasket. Now there's a bunch of antifreeze down in here now. I'm gonna have to get a bunch of rags and stuff and sop all that up. Bunch of carbon in there. So I'm gonna get this down so we can look at it. There's her on the back side where I marked for the distributor to line up the distributor. This is where it was leaking from, right over here. Can't exactly tell where it was coming from. Oh, well, right there probably. That's probably where it was coming from, right there. So, there it is. It was leaking back there, right there in that corner is where it was leaking. So, time for me to go run into town now that I got all this apart and start, need to get a whole bunch of shop rags and stuff so I can sop up all that antifreeze that's down in the valley. And I just changed the oil, but I'm probably going to be changing the oil again. And then I'm going to have to clean all that up, and I'm going to separate these, like I said, and I'm going to clean the inside of this, because this is pretty dirty inside of there. So, yeah. Alright, took the upper intake off the lower intake. And as you can see, back here's not that bad. It's actually, it smells like fuel. It smells like fuel back here, and that's clean. So I'm wondering, you know, what's going on. I'm wondering if this is leaking, which I'm not surprised because I'm pretty sure this is my factory spider injection. But you can see up here where the EGR is, it's pretty caked. So I'm not going to remove this because it's a high likelihood these are just going to shatter. But yeah, I don't want to remove these and risk breaking them because this is old, and the old, really old style. If it was the newer map, you know, multi-point injection where the injectors aren't in here, the pop-it style, and it was actually down here, I would actually be fine with messing with them. But no, not right now. So I'm just going to spray all this down with purple power, spray all that down with purple power, and try to clean all back here. It's not going to be, you know, just completely disassembled and clean, spotless, but I at least want to get all this carbon from up here and some of the carbon from over here. And then I can worry about cleaning up all this stuff. So I'll be back after I clean it all. You don't need to see that. Well, I got my intake cleaned up, top and bottom. I got some of a lot of the caked up stuff out, but it's still stained. And I didn't just pick at it with like a, you know, if I had a parts washer, I'd probably get it a lot more cleaner. But found some stuff I'm not too happy with. And that's pitting. A heck of a lot of pitting. All this stuff, that's pitting. Goes around there, that's a deep pitting. That's pitting going up here. It's pitting over here. Really deep over here. There's a hole right there. It's pitted over there. Now this side is the side it was leaking on, and it's pitted over here, but not terrible. But yeah, it's pitted around there, a little bit right there, and it's pitted over here. I'm debating on putting RTV around the gasket. Now, the gasket that was in it, I have a feeling this gasket contributed to the pitting. I don't know who makes this. Doesn't say Felpro on it. But I have a feeling that this gasket, with this being plastic and this being just a tiny little O-ring, I had a feeling that this being just a tiny O-ring and the rest of this being plastic, I think this contributed to the corrosion. Yeah, so I am heavily debating on around the coolant passages and then up to the intake holes, putting a small layer of RTV. So, you know, putting a layer of RTV here over to here. This gasket being this, you know, thick might cause it not to leak, but I don't want to take any chances and have this leak again. I am going to have to get another intake at some point because that corrosion is just going to cause a lot of headaches in the future. But yeah, now I just got to go up here and clean all that up. I got this cleaned up too. Got most of this stuff cleaned, so not too happy about finding that corrosion, but hopefully I can get it not to leak. So it wasn't leaking where the corrosion was. It was only leaking in the back where the corrosion wasn't. So I know the gasket failed, but I really don't like that corrosion. Got it all cleaned up now. It's as good as it's going to get anyway. I've scraped it. It's kind of stained in some areas like that, but I can't get it exactly spotless. I've even used some light sandpaper. You really wanted to be nice and shiny all the way around, but like I said, I've rubbed and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed, and that's not coming off. I've scraped it. It's not scraping off. So it'd be nice if I had a little roll-lock wheel or whizzy wheel. But I know I got at least one or two around here, and I can't find them. And it's already too late to go back to the store and get any. So this is as good as it's going to get. Yeah, time to put the gaskets on. But first I got to put the upper intake on the lower intake. So, and that's fairly simple. Take the old gasket off here. The Velcro kit comes with a gasket. So it also comes with, you want to take your throttle body off, it comes with a throttle body gasket. It comes with a gasket for the injector. So I'm going to pull the gaskets off and I'm going to put it on. It's not very tight, pretty much hand tight. I'll get you a torque spec if you really want it. But alright, I haven't tightened these down yet, but these are 45 inch-pounds first pass, then 83 inch-pounds second pass. But I replaced one of the O-rings, and I remembered that it wasn't, that I saw something different. And it's right here in the OEM. You got an O-ring, washer, another O-ring, and a spacer. And that's what this looks like. This is actually an injector rebuild kit. It works for both the 4.3 and the 350 and maybe even the 5.0 spider injection. It's a full rebuild kit, but the only thing you're going to take out of it, yellow O-rings, black O-rings that are the same size as this O-ring and this spacer, or this washer, and then these two spacers. These O-rings are different sizes for the different fuel lines. And this is how they go in on the top of the injector. And that's the stuff that I pulled out. And what I did is I just got through here, got two screws that were big enough that were able to thread into these old inserts that are in here and pull them out. And then I pulled the O-ring, the washer, and the other O-ring out. So now I'm going to put the O-rings in. And it's one O-ring, washer, another O-ring, and then the spacer. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in and then tighten down the intake. And then I'll put the intake gaskets on the motor. Alright, intake's all down and torqued. Got the O-rings in there. Got my EGR block-off plates in there. Block-off plate and plug in there. So now I can put the RTV on the front and a little bit up the side in the front, and in the back, along the back, and a little bit up on the back. Got the RTV in the front, RTV in the back, and like I said, I made the executive decision to put a little bit of RTV around the coolant ports because my intake is my intake has those corrosion and pitted spots on it. So we'll see what that does. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go in here, set the intake down, and start putting the bolts down. It's getting late, so I'm not going to be setting up the camera and trying to get these shots like I was earlier. Alright, intake is on and tight. Hopefully it doesn't leak with the corroded, where it's corroded around the coolant passages. Anyway, got all that tight. So, again, like I said, it's getting late. I'm just going to start putting stuff back on it. You saw how it was taken apart, or you took it apart, so you know how it was. I'm going to just start laying the harness over, plugging stuff up. Well, first of all, get the manifolds back, or get the valve covers back on. So use the valve cover gaskets that came with that Velcro kit. I'm going to put the valve cover gaskets on, and then lay the harness over. Last thing I'm probably going to do is going to be the distributor. I'm going to go ahead and put the fuel line in, because that'll be easier before I start laying the harness down. So, all right, like I said, I wasn't going to record everything because it is 4:30 in the morning. So, went ahead and put everything together. Everything's all good, except I lost, no clue how. Maybe it's in the depths of the engine bay somewhere. The fresh air hose that goes to that valve cover up to the air intake tube has disappeared. So it's just open right now. I'll either try to find it later, I'll go to junkyard, get one, I'll find one online, or I'll just go and get a little, you know, aftermarket little air cone that you can put on it. Something. But yeah, got it on. Got the no spill funnel on there filled with coolant and water. So I'm going to start it, let it warm up, let it, you know, till the thermostat opens. Then it's going to drop and fill up some more and check for leaks the whole while. Alright guys, this is actually a week later, and I was going through and editing and realized I didn't record an outro or any conclusion to that video for my intake. And main reason is because daylight savings time. I was actually an hour, it was actually an hour later than I thought it was. Filled it up with coolant, did all that stuff, went into town, got something to eat, and started coming back, and the sun was coming up, and realized that, no, it's actually not 5 o'clock, it's actually 6:30. So, yeah, I just got back home, took a shower, and went to bed. But anyway, intake's been doing good all week, been driving it to work all week. I actually put one of those little just breather from the auto parts store, and then blocked my PCV intake, you know, fresh air breather, blocked it off. That's fine, because the way the PCV system works in this, it sucks in fresh air from that side, goes to the engine, and it actually comes through the PCV valve back into the engine, so that's where it gets the vacuum from. So that's fine. And I actually, on Monday, I actually found, it's somewhere in there, I actually found the fresh air piece. It was actually, I was airing up my tires, and it was sitting right here, right on my control arm. So I actually found the OEM piece that goes from there to there. But it doesn't matter. I'm getting bought some GM Performance valve covers for it. So I won't be able to use that fresh air intake anyway. So I just ordered some GM Performance valve covers, GM Performance PCV breather, and I'm going that route. So that little hole right there is just going to stay blocked off. It won't hurt anything. But anyway, it hasn't been leaking, knock on wood, and seems to be driving fine. And I'll just start it up, let you look at it. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, and like anything else, it'll be updated or whatever, as long as stuff keeps happening to it and I gotta repair it. But yeah, it's been running good. Like I said, I got some GM Performance valve covers coming for it. I will be having to modify the AC bracket, and I'll have to space up the AC compressor. But I wanted some valve covers. Center bolt valve covers are very limited, and the way this AC compressor bracket is made, you have to modify it, because the valve covers I'm getting, they're not high-rise, but they are a little bit higher, so I will have to do a little bit of tweaking on that. But other than that, I'll do a video when those come in. It will be swapping around the oil filler will be on the passenger side. It's not a big deal.
that PCV valve right there, besides going in the back, it will be going in the front. Again, not a big deal. That's just something to look forward to. So yeah, anyway, I'll talk to you later.